Okay, so if you're gonna look at me like I'm crazy because I'm saying all these crazy things just because you never saw them and you don't have those eyes, we can go and say, well, maybe he's just a weirdly spiritual or religious kind of guy. He just believes in this weird thing and still he's normal. I can do normal stuff with him and you can't. I can go to the store and buy stuff. I can sell you something. I could repair something. I could be a normal dude and I could be friends with you and play a normal game. D&D, it's not always big old spiritual. So yeah, I'm a normal dude who happens to believe this 1 point quirk per GURPS. Like, one weird thing about me is that I believe all this shit. Sure. It doesn't matter though. Same thing as talking to anyone who has a religion, right? You can't convince them to change their belief system because they've seen it. Faith is not the only thing that brings people to spirituality. In fact, faith rarely keeps you there at all. You have faith to take a leap of faith, and then you see something. That's exactly how it works, because there are two types of valid experience. As my good man Hubs once said, I call him Hubs, because he went to Target 2, and I was like, hey, how about Target Infinity? He's like, oh, really? Was that OT8? No, you're sideways on that, motherfucker. Regardless, it's a joke, I didn't do that. Well, I did, but I didn't. I did. I did help with that. Get him out of Target 2. But regardless, Hubs likes to call it SCIO, scientific exploration. I hate the dude. I hate the dude who was there creating a billion-year contract. But there's a slide of everybody, a half of everyone that could still be good. And if it goes beyond 50%, you're kind of in the null zone of like, you add up to meh. Everything's that kind of sucks. It's all apathy when you're at null. Apathy. In terms of passion, right? Passion number line, right? Put the null at apathy, because that's the minimum viable product to get anywhere, is apathy. Well, at least I could be surprised. So, okay, so if you put a null of like, for spirituality, like, well, I don't see what they see. Minimum viable product here. You don't see what we see because you don't have that ology aspect of Scientology. The ology is art, it's beauty, it's poetry, it's spirit, it's a willingness to be childlike in your soul. But it's also subjective experience of that. Not a video game about, remember how wistful childhood was? No. I remember how awesome it was to eat a big bowl of trick cereal out of a plastic salad bowl on Saturday morning, or Cocoa Puffs or something, and be like, fuck yeah. So I remember the fire of those days when I had a good day. Or when I got $1 and I bought 4 of those packs of 4 cookies. And I was like, man, I fucking did it. I got 16 cookies for $1. Things like that. I'm talking food here because I had a food issue. I didn't get enough when I was little, but I'd sneak a big box of tricks, or Cocoa Puffs preferably, actually. And I'd watch my Saturday morning cartoons with my cousin Jeremy, who did the same damn thing, and it was his house, so he got yelled at and he was cool with it. And you're like, remember when we had the no, I'm not gonna fuck around on the game design shit because that's lame. Like, let's just sepia tone all our memories. Okay, well then that's a destructive process if you do the PSD. Don't save it as a PSD, fucker. And you're like, nah, I'm gonna save the whole original as sepia tone now. You didn't even put layers in there, fucker. You're an idiot. So you don't want to throw away a memory. An experience, a personal subjective experience, is another form of knowledge, and we can't download that. We can't fake that. And we can't ride along to get that. Ow. Acid in my back of my throat. It's like a vomit, but it's not a load. It's an inverse load on that. So some asshole out there had this idea that they could steal people's experiences, spiritual ones. That's what this all started at the end of the days. They thought they could sit there and do a ride-along on your spiritual experience, and then they get the winnings. But they also, later, this evolved into, I can steal your flavor when I live in a dark world where I've favored against my taste buds genetically, say, in my engineering of my species. We don't have taste buds anymore because we don't need them. And so then if I subjectively use that same part of my ancient brain, being an advanced human, because the story allows it to go there and someone stood there, so it became real. That's how timelines would be established. It was a possibility space, and someone stood there and said, I'm jumping in the game right here, and I'll stand here and keep it real. Yeah. So along those ways of all the different possibility spaces that were created in the mind of the creator, all is mind. Start there. You don't have to make your null, but just at least follow the chain of logic that arrives from your apathy. And then maybe if you find a better, more solid place to stand, go ahead and make that your null. So let's say we have a basic one. It could be a computer. stand there instead of apathy at least. So along the computer ways, there are ancestor simulations, and we're most likely in one according to Bostrom. But he still didn't cover the idea of people who made the, and then we can just sneak out the bottom too, because we're on the other side of them now and they can't reach us. Because they're made of matter, quanta of some sort, right? And then there might be some quantum seepage if we were part of it, and we can maintain a pattern because of, self-propagating nature of the patterns that quanta use and translate through. So for example, electrons, electron valence shells, those are four-dimensional descriptors in 3D. We see 3D, but there's 4D going on. Ever seen a kaleidoscope in your life? So yeah, there's a lot going on. You don't have to take my word for it, but any null you find, make it, if it's better than the last, at least try it for a while and make it your null on this belief system that you're trying to build. And I say belief system. What I mean is a system for finding true things we can action on, not faith. Don't take anything on faith, fuckers. I don't, and I still got here. I like experimental knowledge, experiential knowledge. Same. Experimental is one null, but then if you go to experiential, you're actually closer to where you should be. So make that a null. Experience it before you criticize it. Now, does that mean take a drug? Oh yeah. Fuck yeah. If it's the right kind. But there's some knowledge on that already. Scientifically, say. Meth isn't a great drug to learn, but I did keep up with a meth head without being on meth once in a big old conversation we had. It was amazing, this guy. He had taken his elevator up, a 1D, one-dimensional shift from null of the heart, of like, I'm taking a drug that boosts my speed. And I was talking to the dude, and we were having a deep conversation about the real shit, because he could talk about it fast enough. And I had to keep up. I had to keep up as hard. But when we did, I was looping him a little, because I still had more flexibility. He was just linear fast. But then there's 2D on that fast, okay, but also broad. I had the natural, so I had a little advantage. And while he was looping, he was also chaotic, and I could catch him a little, and I could dodge back and jump forward. And I could catch up with him being a slower speedster overall, just like in a comic. If we're talking like, the story. So I kept up with the meth head, and we had a great talk. And I tried cocaine. It did nothing to me, because one day it was my dad's wake, an Irish wake though. It's where you just say, fuck it, we're alive. And my dad used to say death is like walking into another room, because he knew something. It literally is. They say you never experience your own death. But back in my dad's wake, we were drinking his plastic jug vodka that he drank. Like he drank one at night, every night, a gallon almost. I guess a 1.5 liters or something, really. It probably, I don't know, it wasn't like a fucking gallon, it was a jug, like of plastic, and it was horrible. But my brother's Mike, Mark, people like that, I was like, hey, I've never done cocaine. Dad did once. He didn't like it, he said. But it's just his day of his death, and everything's taken care of. Everyone was taken care of. I wasn't being a parent or anything like that. I was like, I'll try this. And so they come back, and I did it properly, apparently. It had zero effect on me. Regardless, chemical drugs are bad, in my opinion. Like things that are made and manufactured, even ecstasy as a medicine can be helpful, sure. But we don't need that shit no more. We're talking more like plants. I like plants. Maybe it's not my bias though. It's like, okay, if you take meth, you shatter your mind. If you take crocodile, you get functional leprosy. If you take cocaine, you burn out your sinuses and then possibly die. You smoke some weed, you just don't need any more weed for a bit. I'm serious. Like this stuff I did when I was a kid. I always looked at myself when I did it though, and I goofed off, sure. But I was paying attention the whole time too. Just because I'm doing one thing doesn't mean I'm not also doing a bunch of other shit. But this is my main mission right now, is have some fucking fun, say. So there's that, and then there's mushrooms and whatever. And I think they're purposeful is what they are. They're not something to do all the time. They're not something to, like, become a crutch like coffee. But there's also PTSD people have to deal with, and there's cancer. People have to get their appetite back. So if it does a little bit more good than bad, maybe it's not anyone's fucking business, is what I have to say about things like that. So back at my dad's party, it was his party. And the kids were there, teenagers, when he was in his prime. But they were all adults over 30, pretty much, 20s and 30s and whatever. And so we were having a little party at my brother's house in the basement. And I said, we should do this every time Dad dies. And they laughed their asses off. Because they knew more. And I was sitting there, bringing up the rear. Because I didn't want to leave until I knew it was all good. And I didn't want to go anywhere unless I knew it was perfect. So other people had experienced things in different ways. I used to have meetings with my brother Mike before he passed away and moved a little further beyond the physical for a bit. At least my physical. He's in a physical somewhere. But there's a gap here of spirit where his light can reach, say, across from one physical to another. And in the middle is still a guy. It's a point of view from the middle too. So that middle guy, my brother, who was pretty much just my brother, would sit there and talk to me and tell me about his driving skills. Driving physically. Using my landscape metaphor, think about that. There were people who could pick you up in a car, drive you somewhere where it took just as long as you needed to solve the problem in your head, and then drop you off feeling like $1 million. Because people were using techniques. People were doing stuff to move between worlds. Bring you home one night. Really bring you home to the level of the elevator of that same exact apartment where it's nice and happy. Darker to lighter on the spectrum. Now that's one way to go up. Then you can also go out in time. Various possibility spaces like, okay, well, I want to go to where I'm happy, but I'm also playing a game. People have this on Reddit. There's a Reddit thing where they numbered these. Pretty cool if you read it. But all the conspiracies have a shade of truth. But sometimes there's a middle bit where it's like it's on its way to being true. And you read the green in pigment when you should be looking at the yellow and the blue. Primary straight light is always what we're talking about when we talk in our group. But the middle ground people where they're like, well, there's these ascended masters that are helping us. I experienced talking to this one asshole, and he told me that his grandmother did this thing, and hearsay is what it is. Everyone is fallible. But if you're going straight light towards something, you're more likely to get something universal. So when someone tells you, well, you're wrong, dude, it's reptilians. No, it's reptile brain in humans. There are other people, other beings out there. We're not just talking humans, but we're in the human sphere right now. We're on Earth. And so we're talking about local, hardcore. But there are some universal math things that you have to know. And I'm going to get to those in another video because it's like 13 minutes and I'm tired right now. I'm worn out on this subject. But the thing is, if you don't have the data, try experience because they're equal. If you don't have both, you really don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So, onwards.